Ciao a tutti and you welcome to POP, Progress Over Perfection. In this next episode, I'm going to talk about relationship and how to build a strong relationship with Dr. Christopher Fox. Dr. Christopher Fox is a psychosexual and relationship therapist and is a European certified psychosexologist with over 30 years of experience. I think it's a very important topic. And if you like, please share the program and subscribe and follow me and share the episode with everybody you think need to listen about their relationship. Okay? So let's look the episode and see you at the next. Ciao! People around the world, you're welcome on POP Podcast, Progress Over Perfection, the podcast that will change your life forever. Are you ready? Let's go! You're welcome, Dr. Fox. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Mauro. How are you?
Well, thank you to be here is a honor because I was reading your bio and I think there is a really big work achieving all these things. But I would like that you talk about yourself a little bit so that people can understand better what they listen and where everything starts from for you. Why psychologist? Why sexologist? That is very interesting option.
So, first of all, Mauro, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a counselor and psychotherapist. I originally trained in counseling and psychotherapy over 30 years ago in an old apprenticeship model where it was on-the-job training, basically. I returned to university to study psychology as a mature age student in my late 20s, early 30s, and went on to complete a PhD. And in that journey, I chose not to seek registration as a psychologist and to remain a counsellor. So I come from a counseling and psychotherapy background and also a public health background, which is really important in the way that I look at health and people generally, because it's not just about the individual, it's about the systems that they live in. My entry into sex therapy, into sexology, was non-traditional. I didn't set out to be a sexologist. I had a moment in my life where I decided I wanted to leave academia and I went into private practice, and my work previously in counselling had focused around gay and lesbian sexuality issues, queer issues, and also around sexual health and well-being around HIV, STIs. And also I'd worked in things such as sexual assault, surviving childhood sexual assault. So I sort of stepped into the counselling space in a very sexual space. And then from there evolved into the more traditional areas of sexology around sexual function and also relationship work. I also work for the University of Sydney. I'm co-director of sexual and reproductive health and effective medicine and health at the University of Sydney, and we run the postgraduate program in sexual and reproductive health, which includes the psychosexual therapy specialist training, postgraduate training program for counselling professionals. So I come from a background now very much so located in sexual and reproductive health and well-being. And yeah, I mean, it's my passion area. It's the thing that I never tire talking about. It's the thing I never tire doing. There are times where managing a practice can get tiring, but I have to say, being with people and supporting people through their journeys, I don't find tiring.
That's great. Thank you to point out the psychology and counseling. Can I ask you, what is the difference between a counselor and a psychologist? Because I think there is a lot of misconception about these two roles. And maybe you can clear up a little bit for our listeners.
A psychologist is a what we refer to in Australia as a protected title. So to be a psychologist in Australia, you have to undertake a course of study. So it's generally 5-6 years of study or 5 years plus a year internship of study. And then you're registered through the Psychology Board of Australia. And counselling in Australia is a non-protected title. It's industry managed through the Australian Counselling Association and packed with the Psychotherapist and Counselling Federation of Australia. And so counselling isn't a protected title. Now, this idea of protected title doesn't mean that a psychologist is better than a counsellor. We actually deal in different areas in that counselling works more broadly. However, there is great overlap between the two professions. But I think the big bits, the important piece of information here is that a psychologist isn't necessarily better than a counsellor. There are good counsellors and there are terrible counsellors, and there are good good psychologists and unfortunately terrible psychologists. And psychologists, though, tend to deal more with mental health issues, and particularly clinical psychologists are dealing with psychiatric and severe mental health issues. But of course, within counseling, there's different, within psychology, there are different specializations: counseling psychology, sport and exercise psychology, workplace psychology. So psychology is also a lot broader. Whereas in counseling, a counselor works specifically with psychological well-being, mental health issues. You know, we deal with trauma, we deal with anxiety, we deal with depression. As a broad concept, there are many other areas, but you know, we tend to do a more broader area.
Okay, so you say how many years of study a counselor have to prepare themselves to be a counselor?
It depends. There is qualifications at the diploma level, which is about 18 months. Yeah, most counsellors are either having a Bachelor of Counselling or a Masters of Counselling. Now, if you're looking at a Masters of Counselling, you generally have an undergraduate qualification of 3 years, 3 or 4 years, and then you have a 2-year Masters. I believe, I'm not speaking with complete authority here, but I think the majority of counsellors in Australia would have a Bachelor's qualification or a Master's qualification in counselling. So you're looking at 3 to 5 years worth of study. It's the areas of study are different to the areas of study in psychology, though.
And thank you, Chris, to clarify this. I think it will be very interesting for everybody understand better what is the difference between the two. Be talking with the psychologist and the counselor, and people maybe can choose in best interest what is the best fit for them. But you're here today because I read an article that you wrote few months ago about the scaffolding, the idea of scaffolding the relationship.
Yes.
What do you mean with scaffolding the relationship?
Scaffolding the relationship. In my work, I do with relationships, not just couples, but relationship. It's people often come in and sit in front of me, and I use this little narrative, this little story to illustrate. They sit in front of me and say, you know, we tried going out on date night. And I look at them and go, and how did that go for you? Already knowing, because chances are it didn't go well, because people think going out on date night is going to help the relationship. But if we're not used to talking, communicating, connecting, going out on date night means we're not going to communicate, talk, or connect there either. So scaffolding is that idea that, you know, we have to build a scaffold, something to support the relationship on. And how I illustrated it in my work is I often hold a pen up for people and I say to them, you know, what holds the scaffold? What holds the bridge up in the air? And people say foundations. It's like, correct, foundations. But what's between the foundations and that platform is scaffolding. And scaffolding, if you think of a building site, now, if you know, on a building site, there's often scaffolding. Scaffolding is small pieces of timber, wood, bamboo. I've been in Hong Kong and on building sites, you know, 10 stories up where it's nothing but bamboo and rope. But it's small pieces of metal or wood or brick that are glued, welded, screwed, tied together to form a super strong structure. And a relationship needs to have a super strong structure to support it. And so scaffolding are those little things that we can do that help form super strong structure. If we're in a relationship and we're going to go out on date night, we have to scaffold the relationship. Of course, as a sexologist, as a psychosexual therapist, I deal with sexual issues. And, you know, people come in, oh, we're not having sex. And it's like, yes, because your relationship is a scaffold. You're not, we need this idea of doing small little things to build a super strong structure. And that's how we support our relationships. And again, it doesn't have to be romantic love relationships, life relationships. It can be friendships. It can be business relationships. Relationships need to be scaffolded.
What are the main tools and things that you need to scaffold this relationship?
So, okay, there are many things that we can do. One of the first things I often ask people in relationships to do is to make time for the relationship. And, you know, relationship time, we have to spend time being together, and it's not being together and talking for an hour at a time. It's being together and talking and having simple and easy conversations. And so here I talk to people in relationships about, in relationship time, it has to be a simple conversation. Now, I'm going to take a sidestep here and just explain what a simple conversation is. A simple conversation is one where if I ask you a question, you don't have to think about the answer. Yeah. So a simple conversation is, how was your day? A simple conversation, how are you? The other person, the person responding, doesn't have to think about it. If we have to think about the answer, that's what we call a big conversation or a complex conversation. And when we're scaffolding a relationship or creating connections, they have to be simple conversations. And so I often suggest to partners in a relationship to sit down at the end of the day together. And one of them simply asks the question, how was your day? And then, of course, that person listens. And it's in the listening that we actually form the connection with people. So when we're listening to understand what the other person's saying. We're not thinking, well, what are they talking about? Or here we go again. Will they ever shut up? I didn't send that email. Listening requires us to pay attention to what the person's saying and then demonstrate that we've understood. I mean, this is the next little skill that we need. It's not just saying, yeah, I heard you, I understand. It's actually putting it into your own words. So you had a really good day today, Mauro. You're really enjoying what you're doing. And so it's in that demonstrating that we're listening, that we're strengthening that connection. So first and foremost, we need to start having simple conversations with each other without distractions. So when I say to people, no teas, no telephones, no tablets, and no television. I also suggest if there's children or pets involved, the children and or pets are not ignored. But, this is about the people in the relationship time. Yeah, the focus is on the partners in the relationship. And we only need to spend 5-10 minutes doing this once a day and doing it regularly, daily, to make a difference. So the very first thing I think is that making relationship time where we can have simple conversations to start building connection.
But what is your thought about why couples are together maybe for 20 years, at one point they stop having even just this small conversation?
We start taking shortcuts. We get busy. We forget to focus on our relationship. One of the things in scaffolding a relationship and having a relationship is that we actually have to focus on our partner. Now, it's really hard to stand and face our partner or to focus on our partner all the time. This is what we do in the beginning of a relationship. People talk about the honeymoon period, or limerence is the technical term, that early stage of the relationship where everything's great. And everything's great because both partners, in this case, or all partners facing each other. But of course, when we get on with life, we have to focus on family, we have to focus on work, we have our own interests, and we have to remember at times to bring ourselves back in to focus on our partner. So in long-term relationships, we forget to connect, and then we get out of the habit of connecting. And then it's really hard to reconnect, but we have to do it.
According to the Gottmans say that suggest that the 80% of the time are the women that are satisfied in the relationship. Can be because with time they lose the communication between with the partner, and because women maybe have more need to communicate and talk about things. This why this high level of unhappiness in a female in relationship.
I don't know that it's necessarily only women that are unhappy in the relationship in relationships. And I think in some ways, in having this conversation this way, we contribute to the idea that men and women are so different. But in times, I think there is greater variation within men and within women than between men and women. One of the things that I find in the work that I do, it's about 50-50. 50% it's women, 50% it's men. It's and of course I work with a lot of same-sex attracted couples, and also a lot of poly couples. And so I see a much broader mix. And often there is a loss of communication. And one person it also depends on things such as languages of love, which we can come to in a minute. But I think it's a lot broader than just men and women.
No, I was curious because I was studying this paper from the Gottman the other day, and come out this conversation. She was saying, Julie, she was saying, 80% of chance that a woman is the unsatisfied, the easier to be unsatisfied in the relationship. She said this is why 80% of the time who file for divorce is a woman. I was just wondering if there is a relationship between loss of, as you say, communication between the two. So for women, it's easier say yes, I'm satisfied, than the man say it, I'm satisfied.
And I think, again, I'm just going to return us to, I think we're buying into the whole idea that women communicate better than men. And I think that's a cultural myth. And that, for example, the Gottmans are using American data. In Australia, we can't necessarily identify who files for divorce because we have no fault divorce. And so either party can file for divorce. It's not because one party is more dissatisfied than the other. In fact, what happens, both parties generally are applying for the divorce process together. So, and again, I think we need to look at some of the uniqueness of Gottman's work within that United States, within that American culture that exists. Because I'm going to say, I think it would be very difficult in Australia to determine who files for divorce because we have no fault divorce. So it's not one person filing over the other person.
No.
But I want to bring us back to, I think the big thing here, it's not, communication is about connection. And where there is limited or no connection in the relationship is going to start to falter. And there's going to be dissatisfaction experienced in the relationship. And if the partners in the relationship aren't turning in and facing each other from time to time, they're going to start turning, the greater the dissatisfaction, they'll start turning away from each other. And that's where we really start seeing problems, because then I use the analogy, they're standing back to back. And it's like, how do you move forward together if you're not actually even standing side by side, but you've moved away from the relationship and standing back to back?
So do you think communication is one of the major issues in relationships?
I think communication is one of the issues that needs to be addressed, and often the first issue that needs to be addressed in a relationship, because a relationship is based around communication, and doesn't really matter what the relationship is, whether it's romantic or a business relationship or a friendship, it's based around the idea of people communicating. So I think that's one of the first things, and always the first thing that I start working with.
So after the communication, what we need to scaffold the relationship? What's the next step?
Once we've got people making time for the relationship, and we've got them communicating, actively engaging with each other, listening to understand, building rapport and connection, I think it's then important that we look at things such as using, our partner's language of love. Gary Chapman, 20 years ago, I can't even remember now, came up with this idea of languages of love. And the idea has gone beyond just romantic relationships. But, there are 5 languages of love. So a language of love is how we like to hear love being expressed to us. So there can be words of affirmation. You're beautiful. You're a wonderful person. You're great. I love you. I think you're attractive. So words of affirmation. Physical touch. Now, physical touch isn't necessarily or unlikely to be sex. It's that hand-holding that may happen when we're sitting together watching television on the couch or walking along. Well, for some listeners, when you're sitting in the car driving and you're sitting beside your partner, and your partner or you put your hand on the other person's leg and just rub. It's that simple little touch. Can I say here, it is not pinching your partner on the bum. And here I'm talking more to penis owners than vulva owners. There is nothing more annoying, and to any vulva owner out there that's got a penis owner as a partner, a male partner, feel free to pinch him on the bum or pinch him on his testicles as you walk past, because they'll finally get the message. Don't do it. It's really frustrating and annoying. But of course, there's physical touch. Then there's acts of service. Now, acts of service are the things we do for other people. Baking, cooking, washing, cleaning, words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, giving and receiving gifts is another key thing. And it's not about the value of the gift. It's about the thought that goes into giving the gift. into finding the gift. So one of my primary languages is gift giving. And I'll often do things like go shopping for groceries. And of course, in the supermarket, there's a toy aisle. I'll find something that reminds me of my partner and I'll just pick it up and take it home and go, this is for you. And often my partner would look at me and go, what? Why have you bought me a dinosaur? Because you like dinosaurs. And I saw this tiny little dinosaur, so I bought it for you. I thought of you. The message that I'm communicating is, I thought of you. And of course, the fifth language of love is quality time. And for example, if a person's primary language of love is quality time, that relationship time and that communication is going to meet that need of quality time. But of course, my quality time and my partner's idea of quality time, if we both share quality time as the language of love, could be quite different. And in actual fact, I can say my partner's idea of quality time is laying on the bed and just hugging and holding each other. Whereas my idea of quality time is just sitting down, having a cup of tea and chatting. So both are quality time, but are quite different. But of course, the little secret here, it's not about our partner, not about us communicating in our partner in our language of love. I have to communicate in my partner's language of love. You have to communicate in your partner's language of love. Yeah. So, and what I use with my clients when I'm working with relationships and talking about languages of love, if your language of love is acts of service and you're cooking and cleaning and doing things around the house and doing gardening, your partner will go, oh, that's nice, dear, thank you. But it's not going to communicate love to them. And so, if there's this quality time, well, if you're doing acts of service, there is no love in that because that's taking you away from your partner. So the secret with languages of love is to learn to identify your partner's language of love and then communicate in that way.
And how we develop these languages of love?
How do we develop or how do we learn about languages of love?
We learn as an individual, how we
go to a good therapist would be my immediate answer, of course. No, look, there is a website, 5 languages. If people just Google languages of love, there is no shortage of information. Gary Chapman has a wonderful website with his questionnaire that identifies the languages and notes on each language. There is the original book, 5 Languages of Love. It's a good read. It's a simple read. So yeah, there's lots of resources out there on languages of love. The big message is, though, we have to communicate in our partner's language of love. And our partner has to communicate in our languages of love, not telling our partner, well, this is how I express love, so you've got to get used to it. That's not a relationship at all.
Okay. So when we have a good communication, so for example, me and you, we are a couple. Okay, so we have a couple, but we start to learn the scaffolding of relationship right now.
Yep.
We start to communicate well. We start to learn to communicate in a small bites, slowly, whole communication grow. And then I understand that what is your love language. What we need after that?
Well, then we can start talking about, we're starting to strengthen the relationship. So, and Mauro, I'd like to say you're making a really good partner here. You're listening to understand and you're demonstrating your understanding.
Thank you.
Just remember, my language of love is giving and receiving gifts. I do like gifts, by the way. So, we've started to strengthen, we've started to scaffold the relationship, and then it's about introducing physical intimacy. And again, I'm not going to talk about sex necessarily, or sexual intimacy, or even erotic intimacy. I'm just going to talk about simple physical intimacy. Sitting together, physical touch, holding hands, but purposefully doing it, not incidentally doing it. There's an exercise I have to get partners to do, and it's an exercise that I've taken from Tantra and revisioned as a way for a couple, and predominantly couples, but it works in poly relationships, in multiple partner relationships. But, it's a simple exercise. It's called heart holding. And I ask people to simply stand and face each other, because we're often in the therapy room, but if they're doing it at home, they're listening to this, they want to have a go after it. You can be sitting on the floor or sitting on the bed facing each other. And if you put a right hand on each other's heart, remembering that everyone, that your heart is in the center of your chest. If you've learned CPR, if you've done first aid, when you're doing chest compressions, your hand is in the center of the chest, and you rest your hand on each other's heart. And then you gently look into each other's eyes and just spend 2 or 3 minutes grounding. it's surprising how that simple little exercise can be so moving for people. Quite often in the therapy space, and in the retreat space, when we're doing these exercises, people cry because the strength of the connection is so strong. And it's a very simple thing. Heart holding is a simple activity that people can do, but also just encouraging people to touch and stroke each other. Simple, purposeful intimacy doesn't have to be erotic or sexual intimacy, but just that physical intimacy.
Makes sense. I used to usually with my couples, I ask them to look to each other for a few minutes, but I never did with the hand in the arm.
Heart.
Heart.
And Mauro, isn't that just getting couples to look at each other, get them to
Yeah.
hold hands
Yes.
and
Yes.
gaze at each other,
Yes.
and look at each other's eyes, which is really quite difficult to look into another person's eyes. On relationship retreats, when we're running relationship retreats, we start the eye gazing activity within the first session. And every hour when we're together for the first day, relationships retreats start on, let's say, a Friday evening. And then Saturday we're working. And every hour we're together, we incorporate some activity where we're asking the partners to gaze into each other's eyes, because it's actually really hard to sustain that very intimate moment of gazing into each other's eyes. People blink, people laugh, people giggle, people look away, people just go, I can't do it. And again, it's getting into the habit of doing it, and it's learning a skill. We don't necessarily live in a society where we look into each other's eyes so much anymore. So that power of just being together, holding hands and gazing into each other's eyes could be enough. That idea of using hand on each other's heart and just feeling the warmth of the hand is very grounding and also very connecting.
It's very intimate. It's
It's
much more
very
intimate. It's much more intimate than we think it can be. Especially because you give, first you take some time to do that, and plus there's a exchange of energy between you two. That's correct.
Yes, there is an
Yeah.
exchange of energy. So one of my colleagues and I, in our relationship retreats, when we used to run relationship retreats together many years ago before they moved overseas, even we were quite moved. We were good friends. But of course, we would demonstrate to the participants the exercise of heart holding. And, the two of us were always we were moved and always surprised about how powerful that exercise was, even for us as a non-romantic sexual couple who were just two really good friends who were comfortable with each other and, a very strong connection.
Well, thanks, Christopher. This was a very good insight, especially for me, because seeing all these couples sometimes have this trouble to even look to each other. This can be something I can integrate in my sessions. What else we need to scaffold properly a good relationship?
So there's a couple of other things I often ask partners in relationships to do. One is their greeting. So when you come home, and then this is part of making relationship time. So the arriving home partner needs to greet the at-home partner. Now, does it really matter? No, but it's, if you're coming into somebody's space or into a space that somebody is already in, we tend to approach them. And, I think it's in that act of, coming home and approaching them. And I often say to people, if you've got children who are greeting you at the door, simply put your hand out and say, stop, I'm going to greet mummy, daddy, whatever term you use for the other parent or the other person in the house, and then I'll come and give you a hug. And, I say to partners, come together and hug each other. And also kiss each other. And don't just air kiss or cheek kiss. Mauro, I'm going to say, I'm sure when we meet, chances are, because you're Italian, because I come from a Maltese background and I spent an awful lot of time in Europe, chances are we will do the chick kiss greeting type idea. But when we're in a relationship, no, kiss on the lips. And I say to partners, hold it for 8 seconds, I think it is. I can't remember. There was a silly little research paper, a very good, but silly little research paper that said something you had to kiss for 6 or 8 seconds. Your lips had to stay together. And I just say to partners, when you kiss each other, lips together, for 6 to 8 seconds, you don't have to hug each other. It just put your lips together and hold it with meaning. So that idea of coming in and greeting your partner and hugging and sitting down and not being distracted. So when I'm talking about relationship time right at the beginning, I get them talking about how they're going to greet each other. Then I say within 10 minutes of coming home, sit down together. I say you can do a wee, you can wash your hands, but you can't sit on the toilet and do a poo. You can't have a shower because those things take too much time. This is about creating connection. Because what happens in relationships, partners come home and we feed the kids, we bath the kids, we put the kids to bed, we have our own meal, and then we sit down together. And you're tired.
Yeah.
Is my general response. Yeah, we're tired. Too tired to be able to connect. You need to connect earlier. That idea of that initial connection is really important. So, and the other thing I say to couples, and there is no science in this whatsoever. This is a beautiful story from one of my best friends. Her grandparents, I think, were celebrating their 70th wedding anniversary. And, Nan and Pa, we were all there. All the family was there. I wasn't family. I was a family friend. But, I was part of the family. We're all there. And somebody says to Nan and Pa, how have you lasted so long? And Pa said, we always say before going to sleep, I love you. No matter how angry we are with each other, we always say, I love you. And then piped up and said, there are times where, I could have simply murdered Pa. But no matter what, I always said, I love you. And, I often encourage my couples to do the same thing, my people in relationships to do the same thing, to say, I love you, particularly before going to sleep. And, I was in a relationship for 14 years. And it was a habit that we got into. And what used to surprise me is that if we fell asleep without doing it, we'd actually do it in our sleep. We'd kind of come to and go, oh, sorry, I love you. Oh, I love you too. And again, I share that to reiterate the habit of doing something. But I think it's really important. And there are times where I think for my partner and I, we don't want to say, I love you. We're upset with the other person's behavior. And it's really hard. Yet, when I say I love you, I'm also reminded that I do love the person. And no matter what, I may not like some of the things my partner has done. I still love my partner, though. And so I think that's a really good thing. And I often encourage people, I'm waking up doing the same thing. But, I go to the gym, I swim and I go to the gym. And in the mornings I'm swimming, I'm out of bed at 5:15 in the morning. My partner doesn't want me to wake up at 5:15 in the morning and say, I love you, when they don't have to be out of bed until like 7 o'clock. So it's not always possible to do the morning routine. It's that idea of saying, I love you.
But what if is a moment where the couple is in trouble, no? And I suggest them, because this happened with a couple, and she said, well, in the morning I don't want to wake up and kiss them because they go, well, I suggest maybe for this period of time, try to do it, because your relationship here is in line. More effort you put, especially because the partner was working very early in the morning. He was a truck driver, and he was leaving at 2 o'clock in the morning. I say, I think if you spend those 5 minutes to say I love you and kiss him before to leave, when he come back, he'll be happier to be home to see you. You don't think it's the...
Mauro,
Yeah.
The morning is the one thing that I always leave open to negotiation. Because
Okay.
again, leaving for work at like 2 o'clock in the morning and waking somebody up, some people can't get back to sleep easily. I'm not a morning person. People that I swim with know not to talk to me when I hit the pool. There is a morning, there's a nod of the head. There is, how are you? I'm good, thank you. And you just don't talk to me because I'm not a morning person. I had clients that when I used to do 9 o'clock appointments in the morning, I had clients who refused to see me at 9 o'clock because apparently I was too straight and too boundaried for them. Because, and I share that just not because I'm a horrible therapist in the morning. I'm simply not a morning person. And if you're not a morning person, you're a person who has trouble getting to sleep, or you've only been asleep for 4 or 5 hours, that's really hard. But I think that before going to bed, And when both partners are awake, doing some communication around I love you. And my partner at the moment lives in another city. And so we get out of bed. I mean, they're also starting work at early in the morning because they're a pastry chef. But we often don't talk, but we will send each other messages on WhatsApp to communicate, I'm awake, I love you, things are good. But of course, we don't use the messaging to take place of connection. We talk at least once a day, and the other beautiful thing, and I'll share with the listeners something that my partner started doing, is my partner will go to not kiss the screen, but move their lips to the screen as we're saying goodbye. And I realized it was just such a beautiful act because we only see each other, a couple of days a fortnight. And so, just that simple little act of my partner moving to the screen and making a kissing action with their lips is quite a beautiful, simple little act that I've come to appreciate. And it's like I made comment one night. I said, last night you didn't move towards the screen, and I've come to realize how much that simple little act is so beautiful. I do I kiss my fingers and kiss off that way. Yet my partner will often, kiss the screen, or not kiss the screen, but kiss towards the screen. And it's like just a simple little thing. And again, I'm sharing this for the listeners to start thinking in the little ways, the small things that matter. It's not the big things. Date night needs to be scaffolded. Our sex life needs to be scaffolded. And scaffolding is those small little things that we can do that helps build connection, that helps build resilience in our relationship. And when we have resilience in our relationship, we're able to face tough times together. That's why scaffolding and the little things become so important. Going for a walk together around the block and holding hands is the simple scaffolding activity. Listening to music together can be a simple scaffolding activity. But those other things of relationship time and communication, listening to understand, and, just are equally important. But all of these other little things, kissing and holding the lip-to-lip kiss for like 8 seconds, saying I love you before going to sleep. Because what it demonstrates is that I'm thinking of you. And if I think of you, you're being recognized as a person. And therefore you're going to feel better about yourself. And you're going to appreciate what I'm doing. And so again, it's that connection. It's that connection.
I like it. I like it. I love everything you just say, and I agree with you. Is spending this time to reconnect when we come from work and after a long day is very, very important. What else we need to scaffold and make stronger relationship?
What do we need to make a stronger relationship? Okay, I think it's just those simple acts. We need to think it's the small little things that we do that form a super strong structure. If people think of, for example, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, yes, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, the great coat hanger of the east coast of Australia, it's, if you look at the Sydney Harbour Bridge, it's like a big Meccano set. It's small pieces of metals that are screwed together, and it forms a super strong structure. And so again, I to form this super strong relationship that people are wanting to form, it's the small things that help do that. And that's my big message when I'm working with relationships. It's not the big things, it's the small things. Similarly, to build a healthy family, it's the small things that we do with children. It's not the big things. Often with separating parents, where there is a young child, particularly an infant involved, I'll often get parents thinking about, when they're talking about access and custody and seeing the child. It's like, when we're dealing with babies and infants under 2, it's frequent small amounts of contact, not a huge amount of contact that makes a difference. And similarly for children, we have to remember that we're only growing up children. Therefore, the same sort of things still apply to us. It's the small little things that make up the platform that will support the relationship. When we talk about resilience, and here I'll just talk about resilience generally as an individual, they're small activities. Resilience building is around small activities. When we're talking about relationships, it's the same thing. It's small activities. Getting couples maybe thinking about doing gratitude statements. And here I'm just going to say, I would launch into doing gratitude statements on a daily basis. Again, this is a skill and it's a habit we have to build. And I just say to couples, every 2 or 3 days, when you're sitting down together doing relationship time and having those simple conversations, just give a gratitude statement. I'm grateful to you because you did the washing yesterday, or I'm grateful to you for cleaning the floors last night. Well, I'm grateful to you because I was in a really horrible mood on Saturday and you just sat with me. And I really appreciated you just sitting with me. Just simple little gratitude statements.
Do you think all of these things lead better physical sex life? So do you think that people have a discrepancy between each other in sex, for example? This can be a contribution of this difference?
I don't know that it's a contribution to the difference, but it will contribute to building a healthy sex life. So to have a healthy sex life, we have to have a scaffolded relationship, a strong relationship. Sex doesn't just happen. And I mean, it's that idea that often we think, we start kissing and being intimate, and that's the beginning of foreplay. Well, no, foreplay can start days, hours beforehand. And to be able to have conversations about sex, we have to be able to have conversations, and having conversations about sex. I mean, I'm a sex therapist. I talk sex all the time with people, and it's never easy to talk to people about sex because, first and foremost, there's not a common language about sex. And so it really does take that skill of listening and listening to understand. When we're talking about sex, we start off scaffolding the relationship. And once we've got the relationship scaffolded, then we can start having conversations about sex. Because, again, sex is multifaceted and is often driven by what we desire. We do what we know works for us, but is that likely to work for a partner? And it's often through trial and error that we understand how things are happening. So that conversation about sex in the relationship is a lot bigger. And I'm going to say, I'm more than happy to come back. We can have another conversation about how do we talk about sex in the relationship, because I'm going to refer back to this conversation to start with.
Yeah.
But of course, the idea that, quite often people present to us in therapy because one partner has a higher drive and the other partner has a lower drive. This is not a problem. In actual fact, this is normal. And it's not always men, owners, that have the higher drive. About 50% of the time, it's vulva owners, it's cis women, or people who identify as women, not just cis women, people who identify as women who have a higher drive. And so it's this idea around, we live in a society that says everybody should be having lots of sex. And here, swear word warning, everyone, bullshit. There is no other word for it. The data in Australia in 2003, when the Australian Longitudinal Study in Australia data was first released, people were having sex 1.9 times. When the 10-year iteration, the 10-year survey was released in 2013, that was down to 0.7 times. Now, we haven't got the most recent data. It's due out this year, running a bit late. That's okay. But we've actually reduced the frequency of sex from 1.9 times a week to about 0.7 times a week, mainly because we're more engaged in things like technology and social media. But of course, people think we should be having sex all the time. No.
These are an interesting points. I was watching there's a guy in Queensland. He's making video about relationship. He's a relationship coach. He talks as an expert. And I remember a question was, how many times is a good indication of good sex relationship in your relationship? And he turned around and say, you should have minimum 3 times a week sex with your partner to be happy. What would you say about that?
I would say it's about partners being able to have conversations about what they want and not setting expectations on people. Who are we to decide what's right for people? And given that, over 80% of couples, there is what we call desire discrepancy, one person wanting sex more often than the other. I think it's about couples scaffolding and building resilience, strengthening their relationship and building resilience and being able to have conversations about sex, because sex doesn't just happen. Sex, and I use this example quite frequently. Mauro, you come home from work. No, I won't personalize it. I come home from work and I've been thinking about sex, since midday. I get home at 7 o'clock at night. That's 7 hours I've been thinking about sex. Guess what? I want to have sex. I say to my partner, oh, do you want to have sex tonight? My partner looks at me and go, no, I've had a really shit day. I'm tired. I've got to be up early in the morning. It's not going to happen. And of course, then we have a break, and we have to make time and space for sex. It doesn't mean we schedule sex. Please, listeners, do not start scheduling sex yet. All partners or all parties that are having sex have to be on the same page at the same time. And so it's not a case of just out of the blue saying, do you want to have sex? Well, or even starting sex, kissing and being intimate and being sexual and erotic. It's about actually making time in our relationship where we're both ready to have sex. And I think that's one of the things that often gets missed. I would never subscribe that people have to have sex a certain number of times a week. I would be saying people have to communicate every day and people have to make time for sex. And if we're going to make time for sex, it means that we have to have a conversation about sex. And to have a conversation about sex, guess what? We have to have scaffolded the relationship so we can then have conversations about sex, because that's a big conversation. When are we going to have time for relationship intimacy? So it doesn't necessarily have to be penetrative sex, penis and vagina sex, just sexual intimacy in the relationship. When are we need to make time for it?
I think everything you say makes sense, and I'm in line with your idea. I think if we make time to talk about sex and to talk about each other, talk about our day, talk about our lives, and be nice to each other and listen to each other, there is high chance that the sex happen, and it would be more rewarding than any other way to have it. Yes, it's weird sometimes people say, well, you should decide the day and make the schedule time for sex, because when you were in relationship and not together, not married, or anyway not living together, you were deciding when you go out, and you knew that would happen. So why not do the same today?
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
Exactly.
Or?
I think it's about making time.
Making time. So when you are just dating, you're making time to see each other.
Right. Yeah.
Connect. You say, okay, come Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, be here. We go out, we spend time together, and then we do what we have to do.
Then we stop dating and we actually go into the relationship and we forget to continue these simple little behaviors. When we're dating, we're talking to each other and we're having simple conversations. How is your day? I really miss you. We're making efforts for our partner. And then, of course, life returns to normal. I have a job. My partner has a job. We have friends. Both of us have friends independently. We have different interests. My partner likes art. I mean, I like art too, but we like different sorts of art. I train, I swim, 3 times a week. I go to the gym 3 times a week. I run 3 times a week. We have completely different interests. My partner will exercise with me, but won't swim with me because my partner doesn't swim. So, we therefore have to make time, like we did in the beginning of the relationship.
So, and for the people you were saying very interesting here, because when you talk, I look at all the job I've done. So, and we'll say when you and your partner, you have 2 very different interests in many ways. How people with so big discrepancy between interests can actually work together?
Because they'll make time for each other. A partner doesn't have to meet every one of our needs. I think that's another relationship myth, that, one person is going to meet every one of our needs. My partner's never going to swim. The most I'll get out of my partner when it comes to swimming, I do ocean swimming, and when I have ocean swimming competitions, my partner will come with me and watch me swim, and will happily sit on the beach and watch me swim. And, be there when I cross the finish line and give me a hug. But my partner definitely isn't going to come ocean swimming with me. I can say that up front. I mean, my partner doesn't even want to come to the pool with me when I train. How boring would that be? I swim 5.5 kilometers to 6 kilometers 3 times a week. 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours of swimming 3 times a week, going backwards and forwards up and down a hill. My partner's got no interest in that, and it's okay. Our partner doesn't have to share everything, yet there has to be commonality. But what are those common things? I enjoy going to art galleries, although I have discovered with my partner that we have very different approaches to going to art galleries. I'll go to an art gallery for 5 hours. My partner apparently doesn't like standing around in an art gallery for 5 hours. But again, it's about how do we make those compromises? Yeah. My partner likes experimental art, experimental music, and knows that I tolerate that. I don't dislike it, but there are times where it's like, I don't understand what's going on here. This music is just a cacophony of sound in my ears. But it's important to my partner. And then listening to my partner about what was happening and going on. And so it's not that a partner has to fulfill every aspect of a person's life. Yet there has to be commonality. And sometimes we have to do things for our partner, for the relationship that we wouldn't normally do.
Love it. Love it. So to scaffold properly our relationship, we need to communicate well.
We need to make time, first and foremost.
Make time.
And we need to communicate well.
I said the example. Make a relationship, time, communicate well, understand love languages, maybe learn to speak all the 5 would be good.
No, just whatever your partner's primary and secondary language is. And, again, just Google 5 languages of love. You'll get to the website. The question is, it will identify your primary and your secondary language. And again, most partners don't match.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Love languages, and then physical intimacy and greeting, correct? Greeting. And what about being nice to each other?
Being kind. And gratitude. That idea of saying I love you before going to sleep. Those sort of behaviors are equally important. The message is that we need to make time for the relationship. And it's the small things that add up to the strong things, not the big things. It's the lots of little things that we do.
Well, do you have a couple of books that would you like to recommend about scaffolding or building relationships, or an article? I will put your article under the YouTube video and in the description of this podcast, so everybody will read your article. So do you have anything else people can start?
I will state a topic. There are lots of things that I'd like to suggest, but I'm going to state a topic. And you were talking about John and Julie Gottman earlier in the session. They have a book called The Safe Relationship House. Excuse me. They have a book called The Safe Relationship House, which is the same concept as scaffolding. And there is some really great information, some great little exercises and information in that book. And the other book I'll recommend is Gary Chapman's Languages of Love. It's simple, it's easy, it's not time-consuming, So there would be 2 books that I'd say go ahead and read. But of course, any book that's telling you must do something, I think there's the warning. Or that you've got to do it this way, there's the warning. Gottman's are a little bit different. They have some research. Yet I am going to say to an Australian audience, or to a non-American audience even, doesn't even have to be an Australian audience, to a non-American audience, there are aspects that just culturally don't sit. Doesn't mean that we can't do them or they won't work, but just being aware that, there is differences between countries and the way that we do things. So I'd start 2 books. The Safe Relationship House from John and Julie from the Gottmans, and the other book would be Gary Chapman, Languages of Love.
Yeah. Yeah, you say right. There is difference between how they do in USA and we do things here. But the principle can be transported everywhere.
Yeah.
Is everywhere the same. Well, thank you so much, Christopher. If someone want to work with you or want to connect with you, know you a little bit more, where they can find you?
So if people are wanting to talk with me about doing relationship work or some individual work with them, they go to my website, sexlifetherapy.com.au, and they'll be able to reach out and make contact with us there. We have offices in Melbourne and Sydney, and of course, all of our therapists are available for telehealth Zoom sessions as well. And we also work internationally. So we're available for people if they want to make contact.
Fantastic. Sexlifetherapy.com.au. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Christopher. We are at the end of this podcast. Listener, if you like what you just listened, just subscribe and follow and help me to grow this podcast, this channel, so I can make better content. And if you have any request, I'll be here and I try to find the right people to talk about what do you want to listen. Thank you so much. See you next time. Ciao. Ciao, Chris.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.